Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome. There you go.
Afternoon, everybody. The topic for today is we're going to talk about networking as well as engaging with employers. And here's a little agenda, give you some idea of what we'll be digging into in each one of those topics. But before we start, let me just give you a little bit of background of who I am and what's my experience. I've spent my entire career in the medical device industry. Started in sales, kind of grew up in marketing, product management, if you will, and then spent the second half of my career in general management, owning the whole business and the P&L, and so have worked closely with manufacturing, R&D, regulatory, legal, HR, all aspects of the business, and even had an expat assignment, and so spent several years in the international side of the business as well. So that's just kind of my background, where I'm coming from. I am do a lot of volunteer work right now. I'm retired. I live in Seneca, and I have been volunteering for over 4 years in Cherokee County, Georgia, Woodstock, Georgia, which is in the North Atlanta suburbs, as a mentor for small business owners and entrepreneurs. And then, as Heather mentioned, I've been volunteering at the Center for Career and Professional Development for about 3 years as well. From North Carolina, like I said, I'm retired. I live in Seneca, and I have moved all over the place for my career. So hopefully there's some empathy, if not sympathy, from the audience. So that's a little bit about my background and who I am. Let's dig in and talk. Let's talk first about networking. And what is it? How do you get the most out of it? How do you do it well? So we'll talk about that. And the purpose of networking, I believe that whatever you're working on, whatever you're going to invest your time and energy on, you need to have a purpose. You need to have a goal. And my suggestion, and you'll see this, is to think about it as a process. Have a plan. And if you plan your work and then work your plan and you have a clear goal in mind, my experience is, generally speaking, you will be more effective at whatever you're doing and you'll be more efficient. And those two things are always important. So the purpose of networking is to advance your job search. And when I'm talking about jobs here, this can apply to everything we talk about today. It can apply to internships. It can apply to a job. It can apply to a co-op, all of the above. And so the purpose of networking is to advance your job search. And that starts with just asking for help. The people that you're going to be talking to, the people, they know that you are looking for a job. And almost everybody is going to want to help you. Okay, so just ask for help. Start with, if you're meeting somebody for the first time, somebody in a company that you're not that familiar with, as opposed to, say, a relative or a friend, start with asking for an informational interview. That's a common term. Everybody will know what that means. It's an opportunity for you to ask about the company, about the culture, about the job, about the department. On the flip side, I would not expect or ask for a recommendation, especially early on in the process. They don't know you, and they're not going to be able to recommend you, meaning, hey, HR person, I recommend that you hire John for the job. I think he'll be great. That's what I mean by a recommendation. A referral, hey, HR person, I think you should talk to this individual, John. He seems to have a really good background and might be a good fit for us. That's a referral. And so that's absolutely a fair ask when you're having these kind of conversations. And then your network is going to continue to grow. Growing your network is a way to advance your job search. So look for connections. Start with people you know. Start with friends. Start with family. If you know somebody who works at a company or similar job, start with them. But as we'll talk about in a little bit, leverage those relationships to build your network and get additional names, additional contacts. And you can also do that, obviously, through things like LinkedIn. Okay. The other thing you want to do at the beginning of this process is get organized. Okay. Develop a list of who you currently have in your network and start working through that list. And track and manage this process. Track who you talk to, track when you talk to them, track what you talked about, including the organization name, their job title, etc. Imagine, if you will, you're working your network, you're having a lot of informational interviews, you've now gained 2 or 3 other names in a company, and so now you're starting to work your way into an organization, and now you've talked to, let's say, 4 different people in the company. Well, the last person you're talking to, they go, so how'd you hear about the company? What kind of work have you done so far? What kind of research have you done so far? You would like to be able to go back and, well, I started with so-and-so, I met them, and since then I've talked with this person, and that process started about 3 or 4 months ago. You want to speak and share those experiences and that timeline with them. Documenting it is going to help you do that. Okay, so get organized and develop a process, a tool to help you manage all of these networking conversations and track your actual network. I think of it this way, and I think I said this earlier. If you think about networking as a process is repeatable, and a process is something that you can improve. Okay, so if you think about networking as a process and managing it, you can manage that process, you can improve it, then I think that'll put it in a good context for you. And as I said earlier, everything you're working on, you should have a purpose. You should have a goal. Specifically here, what I'm talking about is having a goal for each networking conversation that you have. Okay. What you don't want to have happen is, hi, I'm Tom. I'm graduating from Clemson. I'm looking for a job in your sales team. I ask a few questions and they go, well, my business, we sell knee implants. The knee implant business that I'm in, we don't hire people fresh out of college with no sales experience. Oh, okay. Thank you. Bye. That's not a real productive networking conversation. As opposed to, okay, so the knee division, do any of the other divisions in your company hire somebody like me, fresh out of college, that wants to be in sales? Yeah, I think maybe our ankle implant division does. I think they hire people out of college. Oh, that's awesome. Can you give me the name of somebody in that division that I might be able to reach out to? Sure. I think Jack Andrews in HR manages that business. Fantastic. Do you know Jack's email address? See, now I'm advancing my job search by asking for things. Feels a little uncomfortable when you're talking with somebody that you don't know. But go back to the first statement I made. These people know, the people that you're networking with, they know you're looking for a job and they want to help. So it is okay. You need to be comfortable asking them for this information, asking them for this help. Now he's given me Jack Andrews' name. I'll add that to my network and my network tracker. And he's given me Jack Andrews' email. And so now I will take the initiative to reach out to Jack and expand my network and explore the ankle implant division and explore the opportunity to see if they do hire somebody with no sales experience, somebody like with my background. And so having that goal of, okay, I want to know if they hire somebody with my background, my experience. And if they don't, what's my goal from there? Do they know somebody that does? Do they know a company that does? Can they give me a name in that division? Can they give me a name in that company so that I can advance my job search process? My belief is if you go into these conversations without a plan or just trying to memorize your goals, I would suggest not winging it. I'd have a plan your work, work your plan. Again, makes you more efficient, more effective. It would be a shame to have one of these conversations, hang up the phone and go, oh, I forgot to ask them this. Because you don't necessarily want to pick up the phone. Oh, I've call them back. Sorry, one more question. I forgot. I don't think you want to be that person. And so get organized, have a goal, write down some of these key questions ahead of time before you have the actual networking conversation or the informational interview, as we called it earlier. Okay. And all the information that you learn, track it so that you can manage it. You might need to refer back to it at some point in time. So you want to have all of that on hand. Okay, so when you're having these conversations, as I said, be genuine. Ask for their help and their guidance. I would use those words. I call and ask for your help and guidance. I'm graduating. I'm looking for a job in this field. Use your 30-second commercial. This is what makes me stand out. This is why I think I would be great on your team. These are the things that I can do to help your team, your company, your department achieve its goals. Be very clear on what that is. And so I'm looking for your help and guidance on how to get into the field, how to get into the industry, how to get into this company. Just be very clear with that. They want to help you, so you need to ask them for help. If you're not clear in what you're asking for, then they won't be able to help you. Okay, so all of that takes some forethought. And then in the world of business, time is money. Everybody's about efficiency. So don't just be clear, but be concise. We've all heard that around business writing. Be very clear, be very concise. That goes for your verbal communication as well. And then the other thing I would mention is be aware and think about your social media as well. First impressions, we've all heard the saying, first impressions are important. Social media is going to be your first impression. If somebody reaches out to me and asks for my help, and we schedule a informational interview for tomorrow at 3 p.m, between now and 3 p.m. tomorrow, I'm going to go research that individual on LinkedIn. And I'm going to try to learn about their background and see who they are so that I have some familiarity with them before we actually start having a conversation. It just helps me establish some rapport faster. So that's your first impression. It needs to be professional and it needs to be consistent with your 30-second commercial, the job you're looking for, etc. It all needs to come together. And as I said, networking, I said earlier, it's a process, it's a skill. It is something that with practice, you will get better at. And it can be improved and you'll learn things along the way. So it will feel a little uncomfortable at first. It can be frustrating because I only know 3 people. 3 is a whole lot better than 0. And those 3 people, they know people. And those people know people, and your network, it will grow. Okay, so it'll feel a little awkward, a little uncomfortable at the beginning sometimes. That's okay. You'll get into a rhythm. You'll see how these informational interviews go. They're going to be pretty consistent, I believe. But I think that as far as networking goes, the most important thing is being genuine, asking for help, being clear what you're asking for, and what helps guide that is having goals for these conversations. Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about engaging with employers. And obviously having informational interviews, that counts as engaging with employers, but engaging with employers is everything. It's every interaction with a company employee is engagement. It could be at a career fair. It could be a HireVue interview, and even that, hey, I'm talking to a computer, but somebody's going to watch it. You can have your informational interview. You can be talking with a recruiter. You have to think of recruiters as an employee of the company. It could be an email, phone call, etc. All of that is an engagement with an employee. And every engagement is an opportunity to make yourself stand out and improve your chance of getting the job or the internship for the co-op. Because what you're doing is you're selling yourself. You are trying to convince the hiring manager that you are the best candidate, that you're going to come in and help them, help their team, help their department, help their company achieve its goals. And you're going to come in and make their team, their department, and their company better than it was before they hired you. And so you're selling yourself. You've got to take advantage of, and it's competitive. There's a lot of good candidates out there. So you're selling yourself, and you've got to take advantage of every engagement and make the most of all of those engagements. And so we'll talk about that. As we talked about with the networking and the informational interviews, business communication, be clear, be concise, and also be consistent. Okay. You want to be clear and concise when you meet somebody first time at the career fair. And then if they introduce you to a recruiter, be clear, be concise, and be consistent with your value propositions and your experiences. If you do a higher view interview after that, being clear, being concise, that is what they're looking for. And focus on, in your conversations, focus on talking about the what and the how. Again, I would suggest outlining, planning what you're going to say in these conversations. What points do you want to make? What do you want to emphasize? When I say we talk about the what, okay, this is about creating value for the company. So you want to talk about your skills and your experience. And more importantly, you want to talk about your results and your accomplishments. If you can share examples of where you've already created value for an organization, part-time job, club, a team, big project at school, internship, fraternity, sorority, any organization, if you have helped that organization achieve its goals, or if you did something to make that organization better, a new process, a new way of recruiting, something that saved them money, those are results and accomplishments, and those need to be shared with a potential company, because those are examples of, hey, I'm not just telling you I'm going to create value. I've got examples here in other organizations where I've come in, I didn't just sit on the sidelines. I got engaged and I helped that company get better. I helped this organization, that club, this fraternity achieve its goals. And those are the best predictors that you're going to do it if they hire you. Okay. And then the how, focus on, you have to talk about the how as well. I say, how are you going to show up at work? What as a person, as a team member, do you play well in the sandbox? Do you get along well with others? I had an employee once who was fantastic on the results, created so much of value, developed really creative tools for our sales team. He invented a new product that drove $12 million in sales in the first 12 months. I mean, you talk about the what and the results, and this guy was one of the best employees I've ever had. He didn't get along with anybody. He was selfish. He hoarded information. He didn't take any coaching. He thought he was perfect. And so the how was not good, not strong. And so employers want to know that you understand the importance of results and creating value, and that you're going to be that employee for them. But they also want to know that you're going to play well in the sandbox. You're going to be collaborative. You can work on these cross-functional teams, etc. And so talk a little bit about that. And one of the ways to do that is to leverage core competencies. The Career Center has a list of core competencies. There's a bunch of them out there. Words like adaptable, results-oriented, collaborative, analytical, flexible. These are words that companies use to describe their employees. And these are words and terms that companies use when you get your performance review at the end of each year. They talk about what, the results that you accomplished, and they talk about the how, your core competencies. your behaviors. And so you will be speaking their language. So find 2 to 4. You definitely don't want to use all of them. You don't want to list, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, that will come across as disingenuous. Find 2 to 4 core competencies that genuinely describe you and how you will show up at work. And they should also be consistent with what the job is. If I'm looking for a job in finance, analytical, high attention to detail, probably some key things that they're looking for. If you are analytical with a high attention to detail, then those would be 2 good core competencies for you to use. If you're looking for a job in marketing, where you are the hub of the wheel and you have to influence R&D and sales and finance, but those people don't report to you, then collaborative is probably going to be one that you'll want to use. Okay. And then in these conversations, utilize your 30-second commercial. Okay. Your 30-second commercial is just that. It's your elevator pitch that describes the what and the how for you. And so write it down, memorize it, practice it. Sounds hokey. Practice it in front of a mirror, practice it in front of a laptop, record yourself so you can watch yourself back. It sounds weird, it's uncomfortable, but it works. Because in the end, your 30-second commercial has to be 100% natural and authentic. It just needs to flow. You can't be looking up like you're trying to remember the words. Okay, so get ahead of that, write it down, and plan it and practice it. Sorry. The other way to think about your 30-second commercial is this is your brand. Okay. And as a brand, when you think about brands for products, brands for companies, your brand needs to be relevant and relatable. Okay. So think about, before you start writing your 30-second commercial and putting it together, think about the type of job or internship or the field that you want to get into. Think about what the qualifications are for that job. Think about the requirements associated with that job. Think about the type of core competencies, as I just explained to you. Think about the types of core competencies that would be most relevant to that job, and build those things into your 30-second commercial. Okay. If I'm looking for a job in sales, I work from home. I'm not in the office, so I've got to have initiative. I got to get myself up out of bed every day and leave the house and go work and call on customers. I've got to overcome adversity. I have to hit my number, my quota, no matter what. And if I have a back order, I have to overcome that to achieve my goal. And I've got to be competitive. That's just in the DNA of a salesperson. If I'm an engineer, I've got to have creative problem solving. I've got to be collaborative, because if I'm an R&D engineer, I've got to work with quality. I've got to work with manufacturing, maybe even regulatory. Everything is a cross-functional team, so I've got to be collaborative there. I've got to think about process orientation, because a lot of R&D projects are driven by procedures. So think about the job, the field you want to go into, and let that guide your 30-second commercial so that it is relevant and relatable. And then your brand needs to be consistent. I think this is obvious because you see it again with all brands of products and companies. You can't make up a 30-second commercial because it sounds really good. If it's not really about you, if you're using core competencies that don't really apply to you, that's just not me. I'm this instead. That's okay. Be authentic. Be genuine on who you are, the work you, because if it's not real, a potential employer will pick up on that pretty quickly. Okay. And as I said earlier, from a consistency standpoint, it needs to align with your resume, it needs to align with your social media, it needs to align with your networking conversations and your interviews. It all needs to be consistent. Okay. So we talked the last couple slides, we talked about how to engage with employers, how to communicate, how to talk with them. Let's talk about the job search process now. We talked about networking as a process and how to manage that. The job search process is very similar. You have to be organized. You have to manage and track the process because you will most likely have multiple engagements. Okay. I'm interviewing for an R&D engineer job. And I've got interviews now with BMW, Michelin, Ford, and Tesla. And they don't all start in the same week. One of those companies I started engaging with back in February. Two of them I started engaging with in April, and one of them I've got my first engagement, my first informational interview or hire view interview next week. And so that last one, I got a hire view interview coming up, sorry. But the first one that I started back in February, I've already interviewed with 3 people. And the other 2, I've interviewed with 2 people. Now I've got 4 companies and a dozen different people that I'm interviewing and engaging with across a crazy timeline. If I'm not organized and I'm not tracking that, the risk of me sending the wrong cover letter to somebody, for example, the Tesla cover letter, the BMW, is very high. The risk of me sending the wrong thank you note to somebody and referencing a conversation that we didn't have becomes very high. That's embarrassing. And it's super easy to happen. So just get out in front of it, get organized, track all of these engagements, who you talk to, what did you talk about, when did you talk to them, what was kind of the main points of the conversation. And that'll keep you, nothing will slip through the cracks. And it'll minimize the chance of making a mistake and either not sending a thank you note, not following up, or following up at the wrong time, making some kind of mistake, or sending just the wrong information to somebody. Okay, so get organized and think of it as a process and track it. Thank you notes. Always send a thank you note. And not just because it's polite and good practice, although that is part of it. It's part of the process. These people took a lot of their time to, and oftentimes money, to interview you. They are seriously considering you as a candidate, and you should appreciate that. It is a big deal. So I think about every one-on-one discussion, whether it's a phone call or in person or virtual, send them a thank you note. You can go old school and send them a handwritten note. Email is just fine. I personally would not send a text message. No, thanks. Just wouldn't do it. I don't think that that's appropriate. I think most professionals would not think that's appropriate. And I'm not sure that allows you to get as much value from the thank you note as you can. Because I suggest, I would not suggest sending a generic thank you note that's just cut and paste that you send to everybody. Really appreciate your time. Look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you very much. What I would suggest is referencing in your thank you note whatever you talked about. If I interviewed with someone in HR and a big part of our conversation was around the culture in the company, then when I send my thank you note to that HR person, thanking them for their time, I'm going to say, I really appreciate your perspective on the culture. I think it fits really well with my style. I'm extremely collaborative and love to work on cross-functional teams. And so I think that would be a great fit and a culture where I could easily and quickly contribute to the company being successful, something like that. Notice I referenced the culture. And so I'm saying, I heard you. I know what we talked about. So I've personalized it. And I've leveraged the thank you note to sell myself one more time. I've used the core competency of I'm collaborative and I can perform well in this environment. So I've used my core competencies, my how, my what, and personalized it and leveraged that thank you note one more time to sell myself. And you do it concisely, so it's not over the top, cheesy selling. It's just genuine. Hey, I heard you, and you know what? I'm excited about that. I can perform well in that environment. That's more valuable, gives you a better opportunity than just a generic thank you. And I don't think you can accomplish that at all in a text message, in addition to a text just not being personal and in my opinion, not being professional enough. Okay. So always send a thank you note out of courtesy, but also send a thank you note because it's a tool and an opportunity for you to sell yourself one more time. Okay. And then the last thing here, I get a lot of questions on following up. Do I follow up? How do I follow up? When do I follow up, etc. In an ideal world, when you're having your conversation with somebody, whether it's an interview, whether it's an informational interview, ask them, there's usually some kind of action item. Yeah, I don't know that person's name, but I'll get it for you. Or I don't have their email on hand right now or their cell phone, but I'll be able to get it for you. Okay. When should I expect that? When do you think I'll hear back from you? You'll hear back from me by the end of the week, or you'll hear back from me in 2 weeks. Ideally, that's how the conversation will go. A lot of times, I know I forget to ask that. I forget to ask, when should I expect to hear back from you, or when should I follow up with you? So in that situation, if I know they said you'll have something by the end of the week, if Friday afternoon rolls around and I haven't heard anything, I'll probably follow either the end of Monday or end of Tuesday at the latest. Sometimes people run late, things slip a little bit. I get that. So just give them a day or two past whatever deadline they communicated, and then you should feel comfortable following up. If you're like me and you forgot to ask and you don't have an expected date, then I would wait approximately 2 weeks. You know, if I interview with somebody or if I do a hire view interview, I'm a candidate, I interviewed with them, and I haven't heard anything in 2 weeks, that's when I'm going to follow up. Okay. And it's not exactly 10 days. There's no science behind it. But I would follow up in about 2 weeks. And when I follow up with them, this is an engagement. Don't just, hey, just checking in, leverage it. Try to get some value out of that communication, out of that engagement. Remind them who you are. And this is helpful to them. Remind them who you are. Remind them the job that you interviewed for. Remind them of the date that you interviewed with them. So, oh yeah, that was Monday. Yeah, okay, I know that guy. You're gonna have to remind them. So, what did you interview for? The date you spoke with them, etc. Remind them if they made some commitments. So you had mentioned that I'd hear back in 2 weeks, and so I was just checking back in. If they made a commitment to you that you'd hear back in 2 weeks, then remind them of that commitment. That's absolutely fair. Not at all pushy. Not at all going to come across as negative or aggressive by the interviewer. And in that message, remind them, use your 30-second commercial, remind them of your brand and who you are and how you're going to create value for the company. So put a little effort into the follow-up message to sell yourself one more time. Why not? It's not going to put anybody off, and you're taking advantage of every opportunity that you have. The other question is, well, how often do I follow up? For me, it's 3 times. So if I interview and then I don't hear anything back in 2 weeks, I will follow up in 2 weeks, as we've talked about. If I haven't heard anything from that, I will follow up a second time within a week. Not the next day. I'd give them a few days to get back to me, but I wouldn't wait 2 weeks again. I'd wait maybe 1 week. If I still haven't heard anything after this, I would probably try a third time, again, a week later. And if I haven't heard anything after 3, I'm cutting bait. I'm moving on. So I interview, haven't heard anything, so I got 2 weeks to follow up. 1 week to the next follow-up, 1 week to the third follow-up. So a total of 4 weeks not hearing anything. Again, you can see where that ties into your tracking tool and being organized, because I'm going to track. I interviewed this. This is what we talked about. Who's I interviewed with? They said I'd hear back in 2 weeks. Now I know, as I'm looking at that tool, it's been 2 weeks. Time for me to follow up. Haven't heard anything. I put that in my tracking tool. Been a week. Now I'm going to follow up again. And so those are the kind of things that you want to track in your tool. Because as I said earlier, if I'm interviewing with 4 companies, one started in February and one starting next week, a lot of moving parts when you start thinking about thank you notes, follow-ups, etc. So that's why you need to be organized and figure out how you're going to manage that ahead of time. So that ends my presentation. I hope that was helpful. A lot of similarities between networking and engaging with employees, and more specifically the job search process, if you will. But we've got tons of resources at the center. More than happy to help guide you through that process. It's as Heather and I often say, it's not one and done. We are here to help you at any aspect and all aspects of your entire career and professional development, from getting your resume ready, well, even before that, to figuring out what you want to do, to getting your resume ready, to finding those opportunities, to building out your network, to interviewing well, etc. The center has got a ton of resources to help you throughout that entire journey. So thank you for your time, and good luck.
Thanks, Tom. We really appreciate you being here. I've added, feel free to add questions here. It looks like we have a thank you from Marissa. Can you link your LinkedIn profile here? Is that something you're asking Tom to do, Marissa? I think we can send a, yes, that's what she's asking.
Okay.
We can either send a follow-up, or Tom, if that's something you want to discuss, that's fine.
If you can do the follow-up, because if you're asking me to add my LinkedIn
Okay,
connection
yeah.
right now, way
Why don't you
outside
send
my
us?
IT skill set.
Yeah, okay. All right,
I am
Marissa,
on
we'll make
LinkedIn.
sure to,
It's out there, but we can build that in, I think.
yeah,
After.
sounds good. Any other questions from anyone? Tom, if you can stop sharing your screen, I'm going to show one slide to the group while they're hopefully typing in some questions for us. Okay, just reminding, stop this recording.